Susan, welcome to the Sipping Point.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So excited to talk Michigan wine and just wine in general with you. But you've had such an impressive career in wine. Amongst it, the editor of Wine Enthusiast magazine. To us wine geeks, that's, of course, a super big deal. And now you have your own company, so a fellow entrepreneur. But growing up in Traverse City, Michigan, it doesn't seem like the wine mecca to me, but I might be wrong. I think we're going to find. But what is it that you encountered along your path growing up there that drew you to wine as a career?
Well, I will say this. When I grew up in Traverse City, there was already a wine culture. There was a region. There was some Riesling planted quite successfully on the old Mission Peninsula, which is one of the areas that I grew up on, and my dad has a house out there. But I will say, when I was younger, the quality wasn't great, and there certainly wasn't the volume of what you see now. So I don't know that I would say Traverse City was super integral in me being interested in wine. Now it really dovetails nicely. But I do think it's a tourism area. It's a resort area. A lot of people from Chicago, Detroit, New York have homes up there. And it's also a farming community. So I grew up around cherry orchards, apple orchards, some vineyards. I grew up around sort of this agrarian environment. So I think that's part of, my being in nature, being around this type of environment is something that is natural to me. And so felt very natural as I got interested in wine. And I brought some of that knowledge to my interest in wine. So
that's great. And what do you think, because, you're a writer, you're a journalist, you're also, a consultant with content strategy. What is it that you learned, I guess, along the way, to your path to wine that really is that voice or your take on the world of wine?
I mean, I think what was important as far as my entry into the world of wine is I didn't start out in wine. I started out as a travel journalist. And so I really kind of always came into this wine interest with a lifestyle lens, I suppose, where I wasn't coming at it necessarily technically. I was coming at it as like an enjoyment, a culture, something that connected to some of the other things that people were interested in. I got into wine because I was a travel writer and I was writing pieces and people were saying, so what do we eat and drink when we go to X, Y, and Z? I thought, well, I should probably figure that out and learn it so I can answer those questions and write these articles the way they should be written. So I think what I've learned is, that you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be highly technical. You can if you want to be and enjoy that. But it really has a place among sort of more mainstream lifestyle interests. It should, and just the way that food does, the way that so many other things do. And I think I've carried that throughout all the work I've done. That's what I enjoy writing about. And my goal is always just to bring more people into wine in whatever way I can and through whatever lens I can.
I think wine travel, or, not even like, oh, I'm going for wine travel, just traveling somewhere and be like, hey, there's a vineyard or a brewery or whatever it is, and I'm going to give it a try, is such a great way to experience wine in a really down-to-earth way, because winemakers are farmers in essence, and they're not going to talk down to you. They're not going to probably get over the top, whereas, maybe some of us can get too far into it. So I love that. And you've traveled the world for wine, tasted international varieties and international wines all over. What was it when you came back to Michigan and this industry had grown up, during your growing up, that surprised you about what you have there in Traverse City?
Well, I think, again, there has been a foothold. Riesling as a variety was planted in the 70s in northern Michigan. And again, this was by Ed O'Keefe, who was really a pioneer in winemaking in that region. He had spent a lot of time in Germany and traveling the world before he sort of came back. And really, he was kind of considered a kook at the time. It's like, I can make Riesling as good as they can make it in some of these parts of Germany, etc. But he really had the knowledge. So I already knew that the Riesling was coming along. But what really impressed me over the last mainly 5-6 years of coming back, seeing my family, I still have family up there, just seeing these vineyards popping up, going into the tasting room, seeing all these new varieties and sensible varieties, I think people were making good decisions about what should and could grow in the region. I'm not saying that we haven't had our missteps in the past in Michigan as far as things being planted that maybe didn't have a lot of hope there. I love experimentation. I'm totally into that. But again, these cool climate varietals and some of the hybrid, even that those really tough-skinned hybrid grapes used, for blending. I just saw some really smart moves being made. And as I started tasting the wines, really saw what it was, that made these wines so special. And that great acidity, the balance, that really bright fruit. I was really impressed. I'll tell you this much. I came in with a very open mind, and I just started drinking the wine. I wasn't approaching it, methodically. I just started drinking it. And I was like, oh, I actually really like drinking this wine as I do any other good wine from anywhere else. And to me, that was the main sign, I want to drink this whole glass.
And speaking of drinking wine, this is a great time. You sent me 2 wines, and these are the first wines I've ever had from Michigan in my 20 years of being in wine and probably 30 years of drinking wine. I don't know. So I'm super excited. The first one, if I'm getting the order here, is the Mauby Sparkling.
Yes.
The Grace Brut Rosé. And I was reading up a little bit on this wine, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, and then a grape I don't know much about called Regent. So, and I love their website. It seems very progressive and fun. They had a little, sort of video about the wine, and it was telling a story rather than technical terms about the wine. So tell me more about this delicious bubbly that we're getting ready to taste.
Okay, so Mauby was, you want to talk about one of the gateway wines for me going back into Michigan wine and really loving it, Mauby Sparkling. So I had heard people talking about it, be outside of Michigan, critics, et cetera, liking this wine. But I started drinking it again, and I've tasted a lot of their different wines. I think the Grace, it's Pinot Noir, Brut Rosé sparkling wine. I think it's just very elegant, very fresh, has those bright fruit flavors that we talked about, those bright berry flavors. I've enjoyed pairing this wine personally with food that I'm eating up there, grilled trout and all these great foods that you can get in, all the fresh produce, all the delicious food you get up there in northern Michigan. But in general, it's just a very versatile wine. I haven't really encountered anyone who didn't like it. It's dry. It's not a sweet wine. To me, it's, again, it's got that really nice, beautiful color, a bright flavor, really nice finish. And I like what they do at Mauby. I think you mentioned their website. They are progressive. And what they do is they're very serious about the winemaking that they do. But they also are great at making it fun, marketing it properly. Their labeling is great. They do a lot of events. They're very food oriented. So in general, I've really liked working with them and really enjoyed seeing them come along in the wines that they're producing. And we'll talk in a little bit about the festival in Traverse City that will be coming up. I'll be pouring this wine at least one of my events that I'll be doing.
That's great. And in the video, it was cool because it was a woman sort of back from vacation, and she's going to have a party and she's going to serve this wine. And really she alluded to the wine aromas and tastes through her conversation with the girlfriend and talked about pairings based on what she was making for the party. And I just found that really fun and different and, something that anybody could relate to. I know this one specifically is a champagne method.
Yes.
And it was pretty impressive to see it's aged for 18 months. Which, obviously is an investment from their standpoint.
Yes.
So, but they also make some tank method wines as well. And so cider, in addition to sparkling wines, I believe you can get. Yeah.
Yes. And cider is another, just as a side note, some great ciders being made in northern Michigan as well. Obviously, they make wine in other parts of Michigan. I do want to be fair to the other regions that make wine, but northern Michigan, the Michigan, northern Michigan area, Leelanau and Old Mission AVAs are producing most of the wine. So I kind of focus on that part, but there are other areas in Michigan that make, other wines in southern Michigan and then really far north called Tip of the Mitt. So yeah.
Tip of the Mitt.
It's a great name.
Well, you mentioned the Traverse City Food and Wine Festival. So tell us a little bit about the event. I know you're doing several seminars, one that ties in with wine with the seasons, but tell us about the event in general. I checked it out online. It looks like a lot of fun and probably a great place to be in August when here on the East Coast, it's a little unbearable.
Yes, I live on the East Coast now, so I'm always thrilled to have a reason to get back to Michigan, northern Michigan at this time of year. Because it's always beautiful. It's all, all that sort of lakefront breeze, and part of why the wine is made, why we have the quality of the wine we do is because of that lake effect. But so the festival, this is the second year. It's a Traverse City Food and Wine Festival. This year, it's August 19th through 23rd. Basically, it's a combination of wine tastings, winery dinners, cooking demos. There are speakers coming in and talking about, books that they've released, James Beard Award-winning chefs. It really is, I've said, and I knock on wood when I said this last year when they were launching it, I said, I can't believe how well this is going. I mean, it was just so beautifully done. I think it's been long overdue because the area really has all of the things that make for a great festival. It's got, again, it's got the food and wine. It has that quality, but it also has a lot of, great lodging, beautiful outdoor activities, the lake, sailing, all these things. I think people really enjoyed it. I know that they were really impressed with the attendance last year and they expect it to be huge this year. So my event, the event you were referring to, it's a sort of Traverse City wine through the seasons. I mean, that part of the world, I grew up in it. The seasons are very, very, I don't want to say exaggerated, but they're sort of on Technicolor. The fall's up there, autumn is just bursting with color. Winter is quite dramatic and beautiful. And spring, summer is like, just a beautiful time to be there with the sailing and all the water sports and everything you can do. So I was trying to think of a new way of approaching wine and wine style that tied into where we all would be tasting. And so I'm doing the four seasons and, I'm choosing wines in my opinion that are really emblematic of those seasons or the kinds of flavors and food that you would want during that time. And hopefully I have a few surprises up my sleeve there, but in general, it's hopefully people will find it enjoyable.
That's great. And if folks want to check out the festival, what was the website? Remind me where they can do it.
It is www.Traverse City, and that is TraverseCity.com. So TraverseCity.com. That is the tourism board. They have all of the events. You can buy tickets on there. There's a lot of great stuff. So again, many, many big names coming this year, which is wonderful and just a lot of fun. So hopefully people will join.
That's great. I know what you do with your business, Resplendent Inc., and also throughout your career is tell the stories behind the wine. And that's so important to me, even much more so than some of the technical details of the wine. And so tell me, what is your take on that? What do you think is the best way to reach, wine consumers, wine curious consumers? And how can storytelling do a better job than maybe the traditional wine education route?
Well, I think it's interesting when I was working at Wine Enthusiast and we would look at covers, I would always sort of default to people because all of the research that's been done is human nature is we are people and we are drawn to people. So I think, it makes a lot of sense to lead with the people behind the brand and the product because that's something approachable regardless of whether you feel you're a novice at wine or, an expert. It's always interesting. Like, who is this person? What is their story? And they usually are great stories. I will say that about the wine industry. They're usually quite interesting. However, I think it's just a way to make it, to humanize it and to give it some provenance beyond obviously the terroir and the region. It's who made this, whose baby is this? And so I think that, assuming that you know how to tell a story and ask the right questions and draw people out, because sometimes people, especially on the winemaking side, they might not be used to talking about themselves as opposed to the grapes they're growing. But I think that's a great way to connect with what you're going to drink. I think it's important to have the details on the wine, and obviously the wine has to be good. No story can change that, but I think leading with the person behind the actual making of the wine or the brand is, to me, I find that fascinating, and I think that's really important. And I think the younger generations absolutely, if we're talking about bringing new people into wine, they absolutely want and connect with that.
Yeah. And is that what you help clients do within your business, is tell the story in a way that connects, that people can connect with?
Yeah, I usually, the consulting that I do for wineries, usually it's just helping them see the story that they don't even know they have, because so it's very easy to get too close to your own story or, to become fixated on one angle. And usually it's incredible. Like I'll just start talking to people, whether it's the founder or the winemaker. Sometimes it's just, assistant winemaker. It could be someone who works in marketing or, in the tasting room. And it's like, oh my God, wait a minute. You do realize what you just said, that's an amazing story that really connects to what you're trying to do here. And it's like, oh, it does? I think so. A lot of times it's just helping people, and it's also giving people the confidence to know that they're interesting. I think, there's a combination. Sometimes you have people who are a little egotistical and think their story is fabulous. And you're like, okay, it is, but more often it's these great people who don't think they have anything to say, or and I understand they want the wine to speak for itself. They want the wine to stand on its own, and it needs to do that. But I also think they underestimate their own story and perspective and the love and the work and the hard work they put into what they do. I mean, that to me, regardless of topic, that's good journalism. Like, what's the story? I want the struggles. I want the triumphs. I want the struggles. Don't even just show me the thing that went well. Tell me about where it didn't go well and how that happened, and what did you do?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I come in usually, is to tell that story.
That's great. Yeah. Because we don't need another this person was really rich, so they started a winery and now their wines are $500 a bottle.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not as interesting. Now, with this next wine, the winery is called Left Foot Charlie. Okay. I'm intrigued. Who is Charlie and what is up with his left foot? But the other thing I thought really interesting is that the winery is, do I get this right, that is in an old asylum? I'm assuming a mental asylum.
Yes. Okay. So the vineyards for Left Foot Charlie are on Old Mission Peninsula, but the tasting room and the winemaking facility, it's in this area that, yes, we'll be tasting the Blaufränkisch. Growing up in Traverse City, there was a psychiatric facility, huge, sprawling psychiatric facility on absolutely stunning grounds that was closed. I think it was closed in the 70s. I don't remember it even being operating at the time that I was, remembering this. But it just kind of sat there empty. And it's a lot of buildings, historic buildings on this beautiful property. Anyway, over time, in the Traverse City powers that be were like, why don't we hey, how about we develop this into, a shopping and restaurant center of some type? Which sounds crazy, but it is beautiful. And they did it successfully. So Left Foot Charlie is very cool. So Left Foot Charlie's part of that. So they took some of that space. They have a really great tasting room. They have a wine bar that is fabulous, that really feels like something that you would, encounter in the old world. It's really wonderful, where they taste all their wines. I was there last year. And so Brian Ulbrich is their winemaker and founder. He is fantastic. He's a very talented winemaker, very passionate about Riesling, but obviously he's branched out into so many other things. What I really find impressive about him is, again, very good at talking about wine in a way that invites people. He's done such an incredible job of getting people in the region and outside of the region excited about these wines. I know he travels a lot. And, he's just somebody that I think is always pushing the envelope, which is great for the region, but at the same time really understands tradition, has a lot of respect for the provenance and tradition of some of these varieties. And so I like working with them. I always try the wine that he makes because I know it'll be good. The quality's there, but that he'll push the envelope a bit. So
this smells delicious.
I believe he's the first person to plant Blaufränkisch in Michigan. So I thought it was important, so Blaufränkisch, Austrian variety, cool climate. I think this is a really nice expression of the soil in the region. So these are glacially carved. This whole region was carved by glaciers, sandy. There's some granite, sand, loam, clay, silt. But, the very bright flavors.
Yeah, bright fruit flavor there, but also very smooth. I mean, this is going to be a party favorite, if you will, because it's not very tannic. It does have that nice body to it, but there's some spice and other things going on that make it interesting. Yeah. And I took it just right out of my Eurocov. So it was kind of at 55. And I think it tastes delicious at that temperature.
Thank you for saying that. Nice. I actually, I like chilling. There are certain varieties, obviously, it's not a new thing. We know that there are really beautiful chillable reds out there in the world. This is one of them. In particular, their Blaufränkisch. And I found that with some of the other Michigan reds, because I know people tend to know about the white wines, the Rieslings, the Pinot Gris, Gewürztraminer. They make an Alsace variety, Kostrzewa Blanc, but they also do make reds. So they do a very nice job with Gamay, with the Gamay that is being produced up there, I find is very good. They do Pinot Noir, they do the Blaufränkisch. All of those I've had sort of at a slightly chilled, and I find them really delicious. So anyway,
Yeah,
I
the
think this is,
varieties sound similar to upstate New York, Finger
yep,
Lakes, which I also love.
yep,
And then, there you had Dr. Frank back in the day that people
yeah,
thought was crazy as well. And
yep,
now, of course, it's a huge destination.
yeah.
I agree. I love this red. I'm excited to try a Gamay from this region as well. And I feel like that's a red, probably through the efforts of Beaujolais and some of the
Mm-hmm.
winemakers there that a lot of younger consumers seem
Yes.
aware of and
Yes.
excited about. It's kind of, tied in with the natural wine movement. Some of the natural wines I like, some, are not my cup of tea, but, that's what wine is all about, finding and trusting your own taste and finding what you like. But do you think we talk about climate change with probably most of my guests that come on here because we're talking about wine, and no matter what region you're in, you're somehow affected. And so a lot of what we're seeing is that some regions are, benefiting. That sounds like a terrible thing to say, but some regions are benefiting from climate change, like England, for instance, with all these great sparkling wines that we're able to get now because some of these regions have warmed up a little bit, whereas before it was too cold to really even do it. So do you think that is changing the positioning of where Michigan wine is today or might be going?
Absolutely. So there's
Yeah.
already prospecting happening up there quietly,
Mm.
is my understanding from some of the bigger regions in the US, because I think people see where the direction of where things are going from a climate perspective. I mean, obviously, they also are seeing some of the quality that's coming out of this region with these winemakers who are doing a great job. So I have to believe that a good part of this is because they realize this is a region that, has some growth in a positive direction to go as far as the climate is concerned,
Right.
and maybe less affected, with these sort of, the lake effect that we have, and some of that moderation that in sort of that pocket that creates, probably hoping that this will be a new region that can be invested in.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's happening. Obviously we don't know exactly where things are going to go. We can't predict Mother Nature, but it is definitely on people's radar.
Wow. And if people are thinking about, maybe for the festival or maybe at a later time to come and explore the wine region there in Traverse City, and I don't know if I know the answer to this, how do you get in there? What's the airport that you go to? I mean, because driving there would be a little bit far for me here in Maryland.
Yes.
So what's the process of getting to Traverse City?
You can fly. Actually, there are flights. There is an airport in Traverse City that's growing. Actually, they're expanding it now. I mean, I know there are direct flights from New York, LaGuardia, straight into Traverse City now all summer, and I believe that's true of some of the other cities. I can't speak to everything everywhere, but you have to do some type of layover in Chicago or in Detroit, but you should be able to fly right in. And if you don't want to fly in or you can't find a flight, there are other airports in Michigan. There's Grand Rapids, which is a pretty larger city. That's only, I think an hour and a half from Traverse City. Detroit's a little bit of a haul. I think that's a 5-hour drive. We're pretty far north, but no,
Wow.
In general, it's become a lot easier to get up there. And like I said, the airport has expanded quickly because the demand has expanded. So I fly straight into town now.
That's great.
With pretty easily. So yeah, you should be able to
Wonderful.
get there. Mm-hmm.
And I will post the links, of course, to the festival, the 2 wines, because I'm assuming if people want to try them, they can have them shipped depending on your state and the
Yes.
laws in your state. So
Yeah.
we'll do that. I ask a lot of my guests, and of course, you've been around wine and an authority in wine for a while. There are a lot of myths that are rambling around out there about wine. And so what's one that you would like to dispel that you hear all the time and you're like, it's just not true?
I guess the myth, whether it's a myth or it's a preconception or something I would like to change, I'm a big fan and a big sort of promoter of ageable whites, holding white wine, giving it some age and tasting it. I think people generally, maybe, in the wine trade or in the hospitality trade, know there's some great white varieties that are so much better when you give them a little bit of time. But I don't think in the larger world, people always associate those two things. So I think, there are a lot of wines. I think you should give it some time. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that you should do that with every single wine that you have, but I've really enjoyed holding my white wines and giving them a little age and seeing what happens. So
is Riesling one of them, or what's your favorite white to age? Well,
Riesling to me is the top of that. So it's actually perfect discussion given in
Mhm.
Traverse City's sort of, I think, their emphasis on Riesling. Another one that I think is incredible with age, and I spent a lot of time in Greece and tasting the wines of Greece, is Assyrtiko, which is, grown on Santorini, now in the mainland and in northern Greece as well. To
Mhm.
me, those volcanic whites with some age on them are absolutely incredible. And it is
Nice.
amazing how long they can age and how beautiful they are when they do. So
And I think the challenge for that is, if you have the ability to maybe, have a white like that you love, get 6 bottles of it or
mhm.
something and have it young so you know obviously what it tastes like now,
Yeah.
but then age it a couple years and go back to it. And so you really can see the progression because it's hard to know what it's going to evolve in if you've never tasted a white with that kind of age.
Right. And I understand there's some logistics to doing that. That's, I don't like to be fussy and tell people to do things that they're like, oh my God, now I have to do that. I want you just to drink wine however you like drinking wine. That's my main goal. But I think, the thing that I have found with some of those styles of wine when they have a little age on them is they're just so much better with food. It really changes the whole pairing. And, it doesn't have to be 20 bottles, just set one aside. And in some
Mhm.
cases, what I'm seeing, obviously we're seeing that wineries are releasing some of these wines a little later than they used to because they actually want to promote the fact that, that some of these wines have some age on them and they're delicious. So in some cases, they'll do that for you. But
Yes.
yeah.
And I'm just thinking of it just because I'm holding my delicious sparkling here. That I just saw a video from Riedel, and they took like a 1960s champagne, which of course is very dark in color,
Uh-huh.
pretty old, pretty. Some might say, over the edge or
Yeah.
aged out. But they added it to a younger. It was a
Yes.
Dom. It was an older Dom
Yep.
added to a younger Dom, and I think they called it a refresher. So
Interesting. Mhm.
I've never seen that done before. I don't know if it's just a Riedel family thing or if it's a tradition that I hadn't heard about, but there's a lot out there. And just experiencing wines with age is really fun. So if you get a chance, try it. Even if you don't like it, at least you see how it evolves. But
I just think it's a fun thing to do. So yeah,
yeah.
and then the other thing, one other myth is just you don't need to be an expert to enjoy wine. And, regardless of the level of wine you're drinking, I really think it's important that we just let people trust their own palates and feel
Yes.
confident in what they like and what they taste. And, obviously there's some really nice examples of categories that we in the wine trade and in journalism would love to introduce you to. But I think it's important to trust yourself, and what you like is what you like, and not worry too much about whether it's the perfect, understanding.
That's awesome. Well, Susan, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like I know so much more, and I'm now even more excited to try more Michigan wines and check out Traverse City. And I'm just excited for everyone to look you up. I'll put a link to your website as well, and maybe join you at the festival for one of your tastings.
I'd love it. I hope people will come and enjoy.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much.